Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I want to talk about something really important in computer programming called operators. So, in general terms, an operator is a character or symbol that represents any kind of action. You might have heard of the term operator in math, where some mathematical operators are the plus, minus, multiplication, and divide signs. So these math operators and a lot of others are actually used really similarly in programming, and in this video I want to go over a few basic operators. First, I want to talk about the fundamental rule of operators. Then I'm going to go over the assignment operator, the UniArea operator, the arithmetic operators, the modulo operators, and finally the compound assignment operators. So first, there is a fundamental rule that we have to know about operators, and that is you can't do any operation between two variables or two constants of different types. So if you watched my last video or just know computer science, we know the four main data types to be int, double, boolean, and string. And so you can't do any operation between those four operators. For example, you can't do an operation between an integer and a double, or a boolean and a double, or a string and an integer. It's just not possible. So with that in mind, let's go on to our first operator, and that is the assignment operator. So I'm going to open up Xcode. So the assignment operator is really simple. It essentially means that you assign some kind of value to a variable. In most languages, including Swift, the assignment operator is represented with an equal sign. So without further ado, let's make a variable number. I'm going to make an integer, and I'm going to initialize it with the value of 5. So here I assigned the value 5 to number. This is a type of assignment. Now let's reassign number to the number 77. Now with the equal sign, I assigned the number 77 to my variable number. And you can do this exact same thing with any type of data type. For example, a boolean, where I say is true. I assign it as true, and then if I want, I can reassign it as false. So it's pretty basic stuff. Now, we cannot do operations between two different data types. So for example, what happens if I assign the number, which is an integer, with a double? Then what happens? Let's say instead of 5, I say 5.5. Boom, an error pops up, and what we see is cannot convert value of type double to specified type int. So as we can see, we can't do this assignment operator between a double and an int, and obviously we can't do it between a boolean and an int or a string and an int. And the same applies to all other assignment operators. Alright, cool. Let's go on to our next operator, and that's also a really simple one called the UniArea operator. So the UniArea operator is actually probably the easiest operator out of all of these. Essentially, it just negates the value. So I'm going to make a variable called number, and I'm going to declare it as an integer, and I'm going to initialize it with a value of 5. Using a UniArea operator, which is represented by a minus or a plus, I can change the sign. So I can say number equals to minus number. So the UniArea operator is just that small minus sign in front of number. All that does is it negates the value of number. So instead of 5, now number is -5. Now, there is another UniArea operator, and it is the plus sign, but as you can guess, it doesn't really do anything to the value. Really, the UniArea plus sign operator is just there for aesthetics and symmetry. Alright, so that was simple enough. Let's go on to the arithmetic operators. And these are the mathematical operators within programming, the plus, minus, divide, and multiply operators. And really, as you can guess, they more or less work the same way as any other thing. So I can say 5 plus 5, and I would get 10. You can make really large numbers, such as this one, plus another large number, such as this one, and we would have a result. That's cool. Now, the only thing really tricky about this is, again, with the rule of operators. You can't do any operations between two variables or constants of different type. So, let's say that I define a constant called number. It's an integer, and it equals 5. And then I define another constant called number 2. It's also an integer, and I'm going to make it 15. Then I'm going to have a third constant, number 3, which is an integer, equal to the sum of both number and number 2. So, what do we get as number 3? 20. That's pretty basic. But, what happens if we make number 2 a double? Then an error pops up. Cannot convert value of type double to expected argument type int. So, something goes wrong because we can't do the plus operation between an int and a double. So, is there a workaround to this? Yes. In computer science, you can actually convert between data types, and this conversion is called casting. And so, in this situation, since number 3 is an int, we have to cast number 2, which is a double, into an integer. So how do we do this? So in Swift, to cast the double number 2 into an integer, we just have to type int and then parentheses around number 2, which we want to cast into an integer. And so, it gives us 20. So that's basic enough. The symbols for multiplication are pretty common sense and straightforward. Multiplication is a star sign. The division is a /, and subtraction is a minus sign. Let's do our next operator, which is called the modulo operator. The modulo operator essentially means remainder. It calculates the remainder of two things. So let's say that we have 18 modulo, which is %, 4. So what that should give us is a value of 2, as we can see here, because the remainder of the operation 18 divided by 4 would give us 2. Awesome. And again, we cannot do modulo between two different data types. So if I have an integer equal to 18 and I have a double equal to 7, number 2, I cannot do an operation between the two variables. As we can see, an error pops up. Alright, so if we want, we can cast. For sake of variety, I'm going to cast number 1 into a double, which is done like so. Awesome. Just like all the other operators, we can't do number divided by number modulo number 2, as I can try to do. It will pop up as an error. However, I can cast number into a double, and so everything will work out into 4. What's pretty cool about modulo in this is that we don't actually have to do it between two integers. We can actually find the remainder with doubles as well, as you can see here. If I make number 2 equal to 7.8, the remainder will actually be a decimal number, which makes complete sense, and that's very useful. Alright, now that we know modulo, let's go on to our final operator, and these are called compound assignment operators. Compound assignment operators are really just a shortcut to a longer writing of code. I'm just going to first define a number again, and I'm going to make it 5. Now let's say that I want to add 3 to number and make it 8. Without compound assignment operators, I have to say number equals to number plus 3, and that would give us 8. And that's all fine and dandy, but there's a much easier way of writing this, and that is with the compound assignment operator of plus equals 3. And that will give us the same result of 8. So this is something that's found in a lot of computer languages, and Swift is no exception. If we want to subtract 3, instead of saying number equals to number minus 3, we can just say number minus equals 3. And if we want to divide by 3, instead of saying number equals number divided by 3, we can do number / equals 3. And for multiplication, we can do number multiplies equals 3. So that's very straightforward. We just have to remember that, again, we cannot multiply an integer by a double. So if I just say 3.4, it doesn't work out. But that should be very expected, as we know that we can't do operators between two different data types. So let's review what we learned today. First of all, we learned that an operator is a character or symbol that represents any kind of action. So this is kind of like math, where there's the plus, minus, multiply, and divide operators. Second, we learned the fundamental rule of operators. It's not really a fundamental rule, but this is kind of something that you have to know, and that is just that you can't do operations between two different data types. So you can't do an operation between an int or a double and a string, or a string and an int, etc. However, if the data types are similar enough, such as double and int, you can in fact cast a double into an int or an int into a double. So, the first operator we learned was the assignment operator, which just assigns a value to a variable or constant, and that's just signified with an equal sign. Then, we learned the UniArea minus and plus operators, which either negates the variable or constant, or does really nothing. Then we learned the arithmetic operators with plus, minus, divide, multiply, the modulo operator, which finds the remainder, and finally the compound assignment operators, which essentially serve as a shortcut for a longer writing of code. Awesome, so you're going to find these operators to be really useful to you in the future, and so I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks.